this is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 331 of Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by In Digital as well as Rapid Deploy, and there is, again, so much stuff that's going on, and I am very excited. It is July 1st, 2020, and just working up to an announcement that's going to be coming up. And it's going to be awesome. I know I've been teasing this, and a lot of you last week on the Open Mic Live were telling me, just say it already, just say it. Well, it'll be coming soon. It'll be coming soon. And I just want to give a big thanks to all the patrons and all for everything, for the support, just to everyone in general. I wouldn't be able to do this without all of you and without the sponsors. So thank you all so much. And today's episode is going to be an excellent one. We have been talking for some time now, and I got to see him. I got the chance to see him speak, and he was at the NENA SBP conference, the Standards and Best Practices. Actually, it was during the Critical Issues Forum, and I believe we were in Austin, Texas during the time, and I was sitting right up front, and I got to see him in all of his glory, and he gave the speech that he was giving really lit a fire under my ass, to put it, just to be frank. And it was all about flying higher, and it was excellent. And it's been in my head ever since. So a lot of things have been going on, and I'm excited to have him on and to talk about everything that he has been doing, from the company that he has, as well as his history in public safety. And also my guest today is Joe Serio, and he's the president at the 360 Degree Dispatcher. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much at all. I am, well, what am I saying? Not much. We're here. We're together, and we're about to drop some knowledge, man. This is going to be good. But otherwise, as I was telling you earlier, I've been having this crazy ear issue, and hopefully it goes away. I'm hoping that the heat from the headphone will unclog or whatever is going on with this stupid ear. I think
it's going to be the heat from the conversation. It'll be the heat from the conversation. That's what
there you go. Yeah,
you're right out.
Yeah, it could be that as well. Oh man! So as I was just saying in the intro here, we were at the SBP conference, and you were there, and you gave this presentation. I think it wasn't just that part about flying higher and everything. There's a part where you're talking about music and learning how to play an instrument, and just continuing. There's always a fear of failure, or being made fun of if you're not doing it well, in the first place. And the way you were talking about it is just you continued, and then you had that moment of triumph. And the playing, like, I'm sitting there like, holy shit, like, this dude's badass. Like, that's awesome. And it was a perfect depiction of what one can do if they continue to work hard and really practice and don't let it get you down, and take those little failures and learn from it and continue and to be successful.
So let me just say this right up front, and it's kind of, some people are plagued by this, not everybody, but I want to say it because it's kind of core. You're not done until you're dead. right? You're not done until you're dead. The harmonica playing that you're talking about that I did in that program, I didn't start that until I think 30 years old is the first time I picked up the harmonica. And it was the first time I picked up any musical instrument. And I remember doing a class a few years ago, and there was somebody sitting way in the back of the class. And from the way he was talking and his tone of voice and the things he was saying, he was already done. His attitude was, okay, this is my life, and this is what my life is going to be for the rest of my life, and it's not going to change, and I can't have anything more than I do now. And I said, dude, how old are you? He said, I'm 36. Like, oh my God, are you kidding me? At 36, you think your game's done? Right. You know, I mean, we're coming from this place. A lot of us are coming from a place where we're freaked out. We're afraid. We don't think we can do something. We can't handle it. We're going to make a mistake. We're going to fall on the face. People are going to laugh at us, whatever it is. And then if we have that wiring, right, we take that wiring and we go year after year after year. And then one day you wake up and you say, holy crap, 10 years have gone by, right? The old Pink Floyd song. 10 years have gone by. No one told you when to run. You know, you missed the starting gun. That line is always in the back of my head somewhere, because that was me. I wanted to play music since I was 12 years old. You say, wait a second, time is flying past. And if you haven't learned that lesson up until now, hopefully COVID has kicked you right in the ass. Because look, the game is yours. It's yours. I don't care what your circumstances are. It's yours to win or lose. And everything depends on how high you're flying. But you don't have to fly as high as everyone else. You have to fly as high as your best self can muster. That's it. And the music thing, you know, it helps to make a training less boring, right? That's number one. Because I do it in class a lot. I play the harmonica. I play the guitar. I bring the electric guitar into class sometimes. And number one, it makes the class less boring. Number two, I mean, you just said it yourself. What you said is perfect from my perspective. It makes an impact so people remember, and then they take it away and apply it to their life. That's what this whole thing is.
And it was really something that hit me as well, because so also music. I mentioned this in the beginning, but I played the alto saxophone for almost 9 years. I started in 6th grade and finished off, senior year, and it continued a little bit after that. But that was one of those things that I really wanted to do, but didn't think I could, I would be able to fully do it. But then I really got into it, and I just love music to begin with, but also applied that with a bunch of different things, which has led to a lot of the stuff that I'm doing right now. There's when I first started doing the podcast and the blogs and all of that stuff, and just thinking about leaving dispatch, that was something that I was really scared to do, because it was something that I loved, but I felt secure in it. But I knew that I would be able to do something more in public safety if I did leave, and finally got over that fear and just jumped in, man.
Yeah. And what did you learn? Let me just ask you very briefly, what did you learn? What did you learn from jumping in?
I learned that I was basically the only one that was holding myself back in that fear that, everybody else was saying, no, you can do this. But it was myself that was really just, it was me. I was the issue. and finally was able to surpass that by thinking, you know what, if I do fail at this, I'm going to learn, but I'm going to make it better, because I had this drive in me, this passion to really push and do something in this realm, and hopefully make public safety a better place for 911 dispatchers in any way possible. So even if I failed at this, I was going to learn from it, and I was going to continue trying to do it. But it just took me getting past me, really to do it, because man, I mean, you can say that you don't have a lot of money or whichever to do it. I found a way around that. And I found a way to do it through crowdfunding, to have people who believe in the same thing help me do this as well. And even if I didn't have that part of it, I would have continued recording the way I was doing it before, with just, just a little headset and my laptop, and continuing to do stuff until it finally clicked. So it was just getting past me, man.
The couple of things. One is, the biggest problem that you have is the same problem that I have, and it's the same problem that most people have. It's yourself. You think it's everything else, but it's not. It's just yourself. And the second thing is, you don't start with how, right? You don't start with how, you start with what and why. Mm-hmm. And so you get really clear on the what, with space to be flexible, because it's going to change along the way, right? And what you started 6, 8, 10 years ago, whatever it was, it's different than it was now. And your vision for where you can go forward is different than it was back then. You're seeing opportunities, and technology is changing along the way, which opens doors to do things that you didn't even imagine. And people are stepping up and saying, oh my God, Ricardo, you're amazing. I want to be part of this. And all of a sudden, you have a lot of hands doing the work, right? Many hands makes light work. Mm-hmm. And if we loop back to the harmonica, what people did not tell me when I picked up the harmonica that first day, I think I was 30. I was 31 years old. What people did not tell me, and it's the same thing people did not tell you the first day you started within the trenches, and it's the same thing that people don't hear from anyone else when they start something new, is they don't hear what's going to happen or what's possible as a result of picking that thing up. So when I picked up the harmonica, people did not tell me, you're going to play at a house party in Paris and a nightclub in London, and for cops in Warsaw, and for KGB agents in Moscow, or at one of the second largest stage in Nashville outside of the Grand Ole Opry, or on 6th Street in Austin, and record on a CD with a band out of Austin. And I don't say all that stuff to brag. I can't believe that's my life. Mm-hmm. Right? And when you wake up one day, and I've heard you say this before, and you say, I can't believe, oh my God, within the trenches, around the world, and blah, blah. It's because you don't believe it, because you can't see it. Mm-hmm. People say, I'll believe it when I see it. No, it's the opposite. I'll see it when I believe it. When you really believe that you can step out like you did, you said, you know what? This is going to be scary as shit. And I don't want to underestimate this at all. I don't want to discount it. It's scary. And you step out and you're like, okay, now I'm committed to it. I burned the boats, burned all my ships. I'm here. I'm in this new country, and I can't go back. So how am I going to figure this out? And the thing that we all need to remember is that every successful person has gone through this to one extent or another. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about success money. I'm talking about the success of tapping into whatever it is that's going on in your head. And you say, oh, wouldn't it be nice? I'd love to do a podcast for dispatchers around the world. And then you say, I can't do that. I'm just Ricardo, and I can't, we convince ourselves we can't. Right? Those are the people who stop and they never go forward. You're the person who says, screw it. I'm jumping. Let me get my Radio Shack, whatever, and a little transmitter and a microphone, and let me just start this thing, and we'll see. Ricardo, let me ask you another question. What is the worst thing that was going to happen if nobody listened?
The worst thing. I mean, I guess I would have created an archive of a bunch of stories where, eventually someone would hopefully hear it or anything. But in my mind, for me, the worst thing really would just, I don't know. I maybe there wasn't a worse thing, because I was going to continue to do it no matter what.
So the worst thing is, I tried this, and now I have an option. I'm going to try some more, or I'm going to stop it. And then I decide to try some more. And then something gets screwed up. And I have an option. I can try it some more, or I can stop it. The worst thing that would have happened, the worst in the whole universe would be, okay, Ricardo doesn't do his podcasting anymore. Your family wouldn't have left you. You had a daytime job, you're working within digital, so that kind of worked out, right? So you've got all the pieces in place. There's no downside. And there's miles and miles of upside. You have changed the world. And you wouldn't have changed the world. And I wouldn't be talking to you, and you wouldn't have had the impact on me that you're having if you just said, this is kind of hard, so I'm going to stop doing it. But you did it, and it was all upside.
It has been an experience, that's for sure. It has been an amazing experience, really. And it's just been from pushing and for lack of another way to put it, just not caring. And when I say not caring, I mean not caring what anybody else thought, because I was going to continue to do it no matter what, because it was something that I really believed in. And in this also fits in with that session that you gave where, you didn't stop. You kept playing the harmonica. And those who are watching and listening to this right now, if you've not had a chance to listen to Joe play the harmonica, good Lord, it was pretty badass, because you start playing it, slow, and really going through the steps. You started with this note, then you started adding a couple more, and then you added a string to it, and then you continued to go, and then kicking ass and taking names. Like, I'm getting goosebumps now talking about it, because I'm back in that moment, sitting there while you're playing. And I remember I had to pick up my jaw, because that can be put against anything in any profession, really. And when you're thinking about dispatch, it makes me think of when I went into the dispatch center the first time and thinking, holy shit, how am I ever going to do this? But then slowly, just like you add a note, you add a string of notes. Dispatch, you're adding a discipline, you're adding geography, and then of the area that you're doing, and you continue and continue and continue until you've got a song that's going as well that you're playing. But in this sense, you're working like a well-oiled machine in dispatch with your team, or if you're by yourself, either way, you're in that flow. And that is what I'm saying. You're in that flow and you're kicking ass, you're working it, and you're going through. So you can fit it to both. And no one's going to tell you how you're doing your job, because you don't care what anybody else says. You're going to keep doing it because it's your passion, and you're moving forward, and you're being awesome at it. So that whole thing sticks with me.
Let me just take that one step further. It's what is the song of your life, right? We can talk about dispatch, and that's awesome. And we can talk about harmonicas, and that's awesome. And then we take it one step further and say, no, this is the song that you're creating of your life. And what is the thing that you want to leave behind when you go, and you don't know when you're going, so you got to do it now, right? So all of you who are waiting, there's nothing to wait for, because you don't know when you're going, and you don't want to have the regret of not having given your gift to the world, and however imperfect it's going to be, right? So to tell you, Ricardo said, if you ever heard this play harmonica, I'll tell you a place. If you put in YouTube, Joe Serio rocks. Somebody took a video of me playing in a small club in Nashville last October. It's sloppy. It's messy. It's ugly in some ways. It's a song I'm playing for the first time in my life with a band I've never played with before, because what you said is exactly what's in my head. I don't care what anybody thinks. And you know what that experience was for me? It was the biggest blast in the world. It wasn't perfect by any stretch. I would do it a million times over. I would do, differently, but you get up and you do it. And the feeling, you listen to the people in the audience hooting and hollering, and the pure joy that I had from doing that, just for myself, just for the let me have that experience. Let me see what I can dig into myself to listen to these other guys playing and give something to the audience, right? It's exactly what you and I are doing right now. I've watched some of your other programs, and one thing I notice about you is that you're a fantastic listener and you're a fantastic giver. And that's what a band is. You have to listen to each member of the band in order to have a song that hits the audience. That's what we're doing. You can extend it to all kinds of things.
Right. And man, I enjoy it. So some people will end up asking, how do you get up in front of someone or a group of people rather and just talk? Like, how can you just talk? And I tell them I do it. In the beginning when I first started doing it, I was scared, but that was just one more of those times where I just decided I wasn't going to give a shit anymore, and I was just going to do it. So when I go up and talk, I will be nervous. It never fails. Nervous right before I speak. But as soon as I start talking, it's done. I'm good to go. But if I mess up, I always call myself out. And people have asked, why do you do that? Like, I call myself out because one, it's funny and I'm fine with making fun of myself. But two, it takes away the power of someone else who might laugh, because now we're laughing together and they're not laughing at me. And I take that power and I use that power and I continue going. So I don't know. Some people might say it's a weird thing, but I mean, it works for me. Then I just continue doing my thing.
Ricardo, it's the same way. I was scared silly of public speaking, to the point where, I'm in the bathroom all the time before I have to speak 30 years ago. And luckily I had a boss. I was more scared of my boss than I was of public speaking. And he forced me to go speak at a conference, go speak to this group, 6 people, 10 people, 25, 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000. And he just kept forcing me to do it. And what happens is you end up learning along the way that, number one, people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they're thinking about you. They don't care. They don't care. They came for something, right? They came for information, entertainment, whatever they came for. That's what they want. They don't care about you, right? They don't want you to clap your hands the whole 40 minutes that you're talking, right? They don't want that. They don't want you to say every third word. Other than that, they don't care. Mm-hmm. They came to hear what you have to say. And number two, they're happy that you're the one in front of the room and not them.
That's true. And they want you to succeed.
They want you to succeed. And the thing that you just said is so invaluable for public speaking is, how do I disarm the audience? Mm-hmm. I was speaking in front of 1,000 people and I lost my train of thought. I totally forgot where we were going. And I turned to somebody at the front table and said, what did I just say? And she told me, and nobody else in the room really even noticed. They don't, because people don't look that way, right? They don't pay attention. Your mistakes are biggest inside your head. And even if people notice that you made a mistake, they blow right past it.
Right. Yep. And I think some of the funny ones that I remember, and it happens every so often when I'm speaking, my voice will crack and I will immediately start laughing and I'll say, oh, I'm 13 again. And, everybody will laugh and stuff. And then, I think the biggest thing is to show people you're human. Yes. We're all human and shit happens. Yes. So, and in the dispatch world as well, those watching and listening, when you have someone new that's coming in, or if you're watching as someone who's training right now, we want you to succeed. Mm-hmm. And we want to help you. So any mistakes that end up happening, the shit's going to happen. You just keep moving on. Don't be afraid. And even if you are, find a way to channel that fear into, another way of learning. But people want you to succeed. And so this is the same way how we can relate that there.
I host a 911 Supervisor Leadership Academy. Mm-hmm. And I ask a question what's the most important task or function, job of 911 trainer, right? So you look at it from that angle. What's the number one thing that a 911 trainer should be doing? Their number one task is to help the trainee relax. That's it. Because if they can't relax, they're going to be scared the whole time. When you're scared, you can't learn efficiently and effectively. When you're always nervous about whether somebody's going to beat you up, you're always looking out for the sledgehammer. So you have half your mind on the sledgehammer, you have half your mind on the information. So now you're already separated, which means you're not learning as well as you can. And I've seen so many old school dispatchers, supervisors, and trainers who, the old guard who want to, like, I'll show these newcomers, and I've been in centers where their attitude is, we'll run them off. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Run them off.
Yeah.
This is why your morale sucks.
Exactly.
Your job is to help people relax so that when the shit does hit the fan, everyone knows we're on the same team and we can handle anything that comes along. And we can empower each other and help each other learn to the best of our ability so we can handle anything that comes.
I'll say this right off the bat. I love that your impression of a more seasoned dispatcher was like a prospector. That was awesome. But this classes and stuff that you're talking about. So we'll get to that here shortly, because I want to talk more about a lot of these sessions. I want to go back in time though a little bit, really quick, as we're going through this, and I want the audience to learn a little bit more about you, how you got into this realm to begin with. How did you get into public safety? What was it that you were doing? What were some of the things that really helped years later, now in the present time, for this company, the 360-degree dispatcher, and the sessions that you give, the books, which amazing. I'm on this. There are a few things that I want to hit on here in a little bit, but what is your background? How did you get into all of this?
Yeah, so it actually goes all the way back. I mean, I'm not sure you're expecting to go back this far, but growing up, I mean, I had a weird childhood in that, not weird, but just different. Mm-hmm. I'm the ninth of 12. So I grew up with 11 brothers and sisters. And I grew up so there are 14 of us under one roof. Hold on a second. My throat's a little thready these days. So I grew up with 11 siblings, with my father, who is a Sicilian immigrant. So he understood the importance of, number one, language. He understood the importance of seeing how things are connected, even if it's not obvious. And we'll come back to this later, because it's critical for everything that I do in my world, is this idea that things are connected, and that as much as the human tendency is to focus on the negative, there are more things we have in common than that separate us. So, and we grew up with books all over the house, mm-hmm. and we grew up with music. So there's tons of music and tons of books, and all of a sudden you start seeing connections between poems and stories and books, and rather music. You're like, oh my God, this reference in this rock music comes from this poem. Oh my God, who would have believed that these two worlds are interacting? And then, then you start realizing that all these people are playing with each other. And so actually, I have to say this because it's all connected, and it all partly has to do with you. I wore this shirt today in your honor.
All right. Nice. So
this is, I saw you, the last time I saw you, you were in a Grateful Dead shirt.
Yes.
and I started getting into the Dead in 1978. And my brother sent me this shirt because we were supposed to see them, Dead and Company, with John Mayer, this month at Wrigley Field, but it was canceled, of course.
Right.
So he sent me this kind of shirt as a commiseration,
That's awesome.
But I grew up listening. In about 8th grade, I started listening to the Dead. And what I learned was, like, the most important teacher I had in my life was Jerry Garcia. Sounds weird, but bear with me a second. If you look at the dead and you listen to them and you understand where their music came from, and you focus on Garcia and Bob Weir, and you focus on what their musical influences were, those paths will take you everywhere, right? They take you into Appalachian stomp music. They take you into bluegrass. They take you to Bill Monroe. They take you to Carlos Santana. They take you to Ornette Coleman. They take you to Miles Davis. They take you to classical. They take you to jazz. I learned about music just from following all those threads. And you start realizing that the world is a holistic, integrated whole. And when we went to school, we had to pick an English class and a math class and all that stuff, but they sliced all that stuff up just to make it manageable. But it's all part of the same ball, right? So you start seeing English poetry popping up in the music of Bob Dylan or Jerry Garcia, whatever. So I followed all these threads. And one day I'm listening to the drum solo in the Dead show. And my father, who was always telling us to turn down the music, comes in our bedroom, the drums are going, and we leap to turn the volume down on the stereo. And he goes, no, leave it. What? Who are you? What alien has taken over your body? He said, no, leave it, because my father was into drums. And later, I'm about 15 years old at this time, and later he says, come down here. And so now I'm like, shit, there's going to be a lecture coming. He pulled out a record album from his collection of an African percussionist. And I'm like, oh, crap. And I'm, 15 years old. I'm like, this is going to suck, because I'm not fully in this headspace yet. And he says, listen to this album. And I listened to this album, and it's rhythms that I know because it's Carlos Santana music. Santana got his rhythms from this African percussionist. All of a sudden, the world becomes very small. Okay, so in college, I was interested in everything, which was dangerous because it made picking classes very difficult.
Right.
So I closed my eyes. I opened up the course catalog. This is about 1983. I twirled my finger in the air, and I put my finger down on the paper, and my finger landed on the class called Who Are the Soviets? So I took it. It was a class about the Soviet Union. And it was everything except language. And my father said, if you want to have any chance of understanding the Russians, you should start studying Russian language right now. And fortunately, I was too stupid to understand that was going to be really tough. So I did it. So I jumped in. I started taking Russian. I ended up majoring in Russian and poli-sci. And the next big thing, this boss that I told you about who was forcing me to go do public speaking, I met him. He gave me a job at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I went to work for him. He sent me to China for 6 months. He said, look, I have no contacts in Russia, but go to China. So I was teaching police cadets. That was my first interaction with law enforcement. And then when I was in China, he was in Russia building contacts. And then, long story short, he said, hey, you want to go work with the Soviet police? So I went to Moscow for almost a year. And I worked in the organized crime control department of the Soviet National Police. And I had an office in their police headquarters on the 9th floor, whatever it was. And I had access to the National Police Academy. So I was doing research and working with the cops on organized crime related things and building networks and just getting to understand what is this Russian mafia thing about. And this is 1990. So this was before it blew up in the United States in the news and the media and all that. So that was my introduction to law enforcement was in 1987 when I went to work for this guy at University of Illinois who was formerly an NYPD detective and got his PhD and became the vice chancellor of the University of Illinois, Chicago. And I worked at the Office of International Criminal Justice, which was an international clearinghouse for information about crime and justice. And we had relationships with China, Israel, Egypt. We built them with the Soviet Union, all over the world, South America, whatever. And we just kept doing that stuff. And I just had all these interactions with cops from all these countries, and Chicago and New York and all over the United States. And that was just, my blinders were being opened to the whole criminal justice idea. I had no intention of studying criminal justice. I wanted to be a history teacher. And he said, look, take classes and, you can take them in anything you want, but we do criminal justice here. I said, okay. So I took them in criminal justice, but it gave me enough of the history. So I was studying American history through the criminal justice system, American prisons and, all that stuff, cops. And that was it. And I did my master's degree. And when I finished my master's, I moved to Russia and started my own company consulting on security issues for American and European companies investing in Russia. That's the short answer.
So what was it then that you were teaching? So you go to China and then you go over to Russia. Are you teaching like negotiating techniques, or what all was it that you were teaching during that time? Plus, I mean, you were learning a lot of shit, I can imagine, and different stuff that's going on in both areas.
Yeah. So in China, I was sent initially for 6 months to teach English because I was so young. The administration of the law school said, yeah, you need to send this guy over to us first because we value wisdom and age and gray hair. And this kid's like 23 years old. So we don't think this is not legit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went over there, and the idea was my job was going to be to run criminal justice study programs for Western lawyers and judges and cops in China. So they wanted to check me out first. And then in the summers of 90, 91, 92, 93, I think, I spent a month and a half in China every summer, bringing American cops and lawyers to China to take classes on Chinese criminal justice system. But also, we went into Chinese prisons. This is, 5 years ago, 28 years ago. We went into Chinese prisons. We went to Chinese mediation meetings, neighborhood mediation committee meetings. We went into re-education through labor camps. They showed us all kinds of stuff. And I was also studying Chinese at the same time. So I learned I had about 1,000-word vocabulary in Chinese. I had already studied Russian. I spent 6 months in Moscow studying Russian at a language institute before I moved to Chicago from New York. So I was learning a lot of shit. But one of the things I was learning was logistics of security, right? And that was just from being there, right? So how do you navigate your environment? How do you interact with people? How do you build relationships? How do you navigate a dangerous neighborhood? I mean, I grew up in New York City, but I worked on the near west side of Chicago, which was not, the most. We had a drive-by half a block from my apartment. We had a guy murdered around the block from my apartment. My brother lived a 5-minute walk from my place, and he had a gun stuck in his face on the corner after he left my apartment. I mean, so it was, now you have to learn, okay, how do I conduct myself? What do I look for? How do I stay aware of my environment? What are dangerous things? How do I protect myself? So all of this became useful when I started working as the director of the Moscow office of the world's leading corporate investigation and business intelligence firm. And also just living in Russia. Living in Russia in the 1990s, dude, it was fucking insane. I mean, gunshots at night, dead bodies on the street, walking along the street, and just suddenly out of nowhere, cars race up, guys jump out, grab somebody off the street, throw them into the car, and take off. You know what? that guy's fucked.
Right.
And you walk around late at night and you see, gangsters shaking down the kiosk owners and, just all that. That was just normal and, normal living environment. So you really had to understand, okay, how do I navigate that? And then how do I navigate working in the MVD, which is the National Police for Russia, when my supervisor there, the general in the police, says, hey, this guy you're hanging out with, yeah, he's not really with the MVD. He's not really a cop. He's an informant for the KGB. So be careful with him. Because I know you're hanging out with him and you're going to his house and everything. Just watch out because he's not who you think he is. And that environment is filled with that, right? Because you think about KGB, concentration camps, who's going to inform on you? So now who do you trust? So we went through all that. So anyway, this could go a while, but that's the long and short of it.
That is crazy, man. I mean, just that, that it is insane and stuff. So you're out there teaching all of this. That would freak me out though, for anyone to find out, what I was doing that had to do with law enforcement, that if they didn't like what I was doing, or if they wanted to shake me down for any information or something, I mean, just the way you're explaining, I mean, people are getting taken out.
Well, there were two basic sides to the job. One is information. Mm-hmm. So we were responsible for torpedoing foreign investments into Russian companies, hundreds of millions of dollars. So if they found out that I was the reason that the deal didn't go through, who knows what would happen, right? That was one piece. The other piece was physical security. So we had to get people, we were racing people to the airport in the middle of the night to get their family, their wife, their kids out of the country because there was a gang that was, going after them. So it's kind of that too. So it's a little disconcerting, when you get in a car at 3:00 in the morning and everybody in the car is like, okay, let's hope we don't need to use these. Let's get home in one piece, so, and our office was small, so we had to do everything that came along. Mm-hmm. It was missing persons. It was kidnap. It was, getting people to the airport. It was information, due diligence. We did escort service. That sounds bad. Wait a second. Let me rephrase that. We had to escort executives, like the CEO of a major U.S. company flew over on the company jet. Mm-hmm. We had to secure the jet, and work out all the details of his stay in Russia, that kind of stuff.
Right. Man.
But I learned stuff like that. I learned it all along the way because I wasn't a cop and I didn't go to training academy, but I was involved in a million different things. Like I had the chance to be part of Nancy Reagan's motorcade at one point. So I saw all the security around that. And I spent 3 days with Robert McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense during Vietnam War. And I just had a chance to spend time with people who were in security in some form or another, right? The former head of Interpol, the global head of Interpol, was a really good friend of mine. Just accidentally, after he retired, I met him and we spent a lot of time together. So you just get all this stuff between reading and talking to people. And when it came to dispatch, I said, okay, I need to go to dispatch. I spent more than 100 hours in comm centers, monitoring calls, talking to dispatchers, interviewing supervisors, reading my ass off, listening to calls. I listen to calls online, stuff, anywhere I can find calls, I listen to them. And any place I can find dispatchers, I hear their stories. Mm-hmm. And then, what's the next obvious thing? Now you put out, it's like okay, I'm a dispatcher. Let me do dispatch podcast, right? So for me it was, okay, dispatch, let me do a dispatch book. Let me do a book that addresses the things that dispatchers are most scared of. So now let me take all that jumble that I just said and tie it all together. So we have a thread, right? We have one thread of how everything's connected. Garcia, Grateful Dead, music, how it touches people, right? You and I have a connection to music. We have the Dead connection, your interest in the Dead, but also because I played harmonica in the same room where you were present, right? We have that's a connection between us and the impact that has in your life. Okay, so there's all those kinds of threads. The other thread is the thread through all my books. We started this conversation talking about fear.
Right.
Fear is the thread. If you can figure out how to handle your fear, how to manage your fear, that's the thread that runs through everything. So when you look at the set of books, it's fear, emotional intelligence, time management, stress. All right, I have another one coming out on leadership, on dispatch supervision leadership, and the thread through all those things, the key to all those things and figuring out how to do those things is dealing with your own fear. The voice in your head is the number one thing holding you back from being an awesome dispatcher, from being an awesome supervisor, from being an awesome spouse, from being an awesome person. That's it.
Right.
It's as easy and as difficult as that. Because when you have to break into your fear, now you have to face everything about you. And by the way, it never ends. Right? So this whole COVID thing was an opportunity for me to go a level higher. So I've been going through, okay, where did my fear come from? Where's it go? What's it stop me from? How can I go to a higher level? What's the next year hold in store for me? What do I want my next 5 years to look like? How can I up my game for dispatch? And it's the same game we all have to play. And what I learned in Russia when the first week that I became the head of this office for the global investigation firm, the first week, on the 5th day, a client was arrested by the KGB and was going to be brought up on espionage charges. And the shit hit the fan, everything's going crazy. And then, that gang thing I was telling you about earlier, when those things happen, what I learned about myself was when the shit hits the fan, I get really calm. And dispatchers know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's some dispatchers who are going to freak out when the shit hits the fan, and there's an overwhelming majority who say, you know what? I know my job. I got this. This is my comfort zone. I've been at this for a long time. I've handled shit before. I'm just going to handle this. And you realize that you get super calm when the shit's hitting the fan, right? So how do you get to that point? That's what the classes are about. How do I get to be my best version of myself? I hate to sound like a cliche, but that's what this is about. How do I get to live the life that I want to live without always wringing my hands, worrying about what other people are going to think? That's number one. That's kind of like the negative side of it.
Right.
How do I discount, or how do I reduce the number of bad things that could happen to me? And then on the positive looking side is, how do I create joy in my life and for other people? So then we take a loop back. This is what the Dead is about. Two of my brothers and I jumped on planes and we went to Fenway Park. We went to Wrigley Field 3 years ago. And then we went to Gillette Stadium in Foxborough last year. And the reason we get on planes and go to the Dead, and these are all trips just to go see the Dead, is because that is a pocket of joy for us. Pure joy. And one of my brothers, who wasn't really into the Dead, he said, you guys started dancing from the first note of the first song. It's like, you're damn right. Because I don't care what anybody thinks or how I dance or whatever. I don't care. And my old self would have said, you can't do that. It's going to be $500. Get on an airplane. It's going to be too frivolous. You can't do it. And my older self said, no, you have to do it. You have to do it. Where's the pocket of joy in your life? And it's obvious to you. It's obvious to me to say that it's obvious to me that a pocket of joy in your life is within the trenches. It's totally obvious because it comes across the way you do it. The way you do your job it illustrates the joy that you have.
I don't even know how to respond, man. you said it all right there. There is so I've got a way to say it, because all of this can equate to anything, especially in the dispatch world, and what you want to do. Like you were saying, to become a supervisor, to become a trainer, getting past that fear. You don't want to ever have those what ifs. And I tell my kids this a lot. And I tell them, you don't want to be, well, I'll start with this story. There was one time where I was driving through my hometown, and it was for my my master's program in new media journalism, and I was going around doing B-roll, kind of showing the town that I grew up in. I was doing a video about myself. It was like maybe a minute and a half, but what they wanted us to do was create this kind of a showcase as we're going into graduation, to say where we come from, what we're doing, where we're going to go, all in a minute and a half. And during that time, I saw this old man sitting down outside on his porch, and he's staring up at the sky, and he looks sad. And I thought, man, it could be anything, but he could be thinking, what if I would have done whatever when I was younger? I never did it, and now I'm just here. So I tell my kids, don't be that person who years from now you're sitting on your porch looking up at the sky thinking, damn, I wish I would have done that when I was younger. What if I would have done that? I want to be that person who's sitting on the porch later on saying, I did it. I did that.
Yeah, one of the things that I talk about in class is that line. I use that line and say, am I living a what if life? Am I wringing my hands, going through all this craziness that's in our heads from growing up, from our parents, from whatever, and we say, oh my God, well, what if it fails? What if people make fun of me? What if I can't do it? Are you living a what if life? That's why the video I told you about earlier, the Joe Serio rocks thing, like I look at it, a piece of me cringes a little bit, but the biggest piece of me says, you know what? Fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just fuck it. Because, even if you live to 100 years old, your life is going to be over too soon. It's going to be over too soon. And you don't want to get to your deathbed. And I read a lot of Russian and French literature that's based on this, where the end of the story, the person is on the deathbed saying, did I live my life the right way? I didn't do the things I wanted to do. Why couldn't I be the person I wanted to be? And the process is learning to listen more to your own voice. Just like you said, I believed that I could do this. I believed that it was necessary. I believed that it would add value. That was your voice. And you said, you know what? Screw everybody else. I'm doing it. It doesn't mean you didn't make mistakes. It doesn't mean you didn't maybe embarrass yourself, whatever. It didn't mean that you didn't have technical problems. No, all of that stuff is a given. People don't realize this stuff is not a straight line. Success is not a straight line. And failure and making mistakes stand directly in the way of excellence and success. So if there's anything you can teach your kids, and if there's anything you can teach your dispatchers, train them as well as you can, but make sure they don't crucify themselves for making a mistake.
Right.
Because number one, that will just bury their real selves. And number two, it's going to serve to make more mistakes. They will make more bad mistakes later if they're afraid of mistakes now, because they'll try to be perfect. There is no perfect. Let's get our heads around that, right? There's no perfect. So my job, and the reason I was put on this earth, is to write books and to do classes and to help people navigate that space, because that's exactly the space I went through. Afraid of doing anything, suicidal, 97 is a failing grade, a horrible relationship with my father, all of that stuff. And you realize that most of it is a lie, and it's a lie that was created inside your head, and it's a lie that you can change anytime you decide that you're going to have the nerve to step up and make that change. Not going to be easy, but it's exactly the reason why the books that you have is called the Get the Nerve series. Is to get the nerve to step up and do whatever it is that you think you're called to do, the reason you were put on this earth, and go do it. And here's the only single compelling reason to do it. Number one, it's not money. Number two, it's not reputation. It's people are waiting and people need. And Within the Trenches is a great example. People need you to step up and be your best self, because people needed, whether they realize or not, they needed Within the Trenches. And you made it, you manifest it into the world, into reality. And you can tell that people need it by the response that they give you. People are waiting for you to step up. I'm not talking to you, Ricardo. I'm talking to everybody.
Right, yeah.
People are waiting for you to step up. We're dying for your voice. And if I can take a little piece of my life and convey that to other people, to give them the gas, to give them the ignition, that spark, to get something started, that's the entire definition of my life. And I came to it very late. So I'm not stopping. Like I'm just stubborn about it because I waited too long. I was that person who dragged on for 10, 20 years, not doing it. And once you find it, you have to do it. You have to do it.
So in talking about that, kind of piggybacking off that a little bit, where do we bridge that gap? How did you go from everything that you were doing to dispatch? What was it that happened? There's a lot of different stories that I've heard where, and this is specifically, dispatch, of course, but there was a certain call, or there was something that happened in dispatch, or there was something that happened that solidified the fact that this profession was their calling. As cliche as that is, their calling.
Yeah.
But it's true, that what it was that they were born to do, what they were put on this earth to do is to help people. And this was during or through this way as being a 911 dispatcher or call taker. But for yourself, with everything that was going on, where do you bridge that gap? How do you come into the public safety realm, but focusing on dispatch now?
Yeah. So I finished my PhD in 2011. I got my PhD in criminal justice, and I had to make a decision. Do I teach for the rest of my life and deal with kids who come to class in their pajamas and don't do their assignment and have to sit on committees that I don't want to deal with? And I had to really examine and say, what is it I love doing? Mm-hmm. I love speaking. I love teaching. I love writing. So that's all I want to do. So I was in class one day teaching in Houston. And I did a lot of law enforcement class. I've done 300 law enforcement classes. And a woman comes up to me during the break and she says, I'm a dispatcher. We're the redheaded stepchildren of law enforcement, of criminal justice. We have to get sent to these police trainings because we don't have any of our own. So I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a niche. We need to fill this space, right? So together with Adam Tim, I started the Healthy Dispatcher. Adam and I traveled all over the country, and we did all that. So that was number one. It started with a woman coming up and saying, hey, we need something. And the other half of the equation is the person on the receiving end has to be open enough to say, oh, here's an opportunity, right? So that's number one. It just happened by accident that way. And as I continued to reach out to 911, I realized you guys are crazy. Number one, you guys are crazy. Dispatchers are just crazy. Number two, and I probably don't need to say this to any dispatcher. You already know this already. You're hell of a lot more fun than cops. Sorry, cops. But you're a hell of a lot more fun than cops. And also, you're forgotten by and large. Mm-hmm. Budget-wise, training-wise, resources-wise. The cops get all the fun toys, whatever else, and you got to fight to get a decent CAD system. I mean, I've been in dispatch in comm centers that are just, 1950s, it looks like. you know?
Yeah, well, shit, a chair sometimes they have to fight for.
You know what? It's criminal. It's totally criminal what dispatch has to put up with and how much they have to fight to get basic stuff. Okay, so that's number one.
Mhm.
Number two was I ended up looping back to 1989. It wasn't because I was a dispatcher and had a call that cemented a commitment to 911. It was the call I had to make. It was when I called dispatch. When, I told you I didn't have a good relationship with my father. We had two conversations. We had two real conversations in my life. Back and forth conversation, dialogue, a real dialogue. And the second dialogue we had, in the middle of that second conversation, he had a stroke. And I had called 911. And to this day, I remember the feeling that 911 gave me. And it was amazing. This is me calling 911 for the first time in my life. My father's in the next room having a stroke, and something has to be done. And the way they answered the call and the way they handled the call, combined with the paramedics and the way they handled the situation when they got into the house, was a total mind blower. And I also come from a family that has a cornerstone around service, which is why I give my books away on humanizing the headset on that Facebook group. Mm-hmm. I give them away. I give away books at classes. I just gave away a set of books this morning. And I don't do it a lot, but just as a kind of part of the give back, right? I keep my fees as low as humanly possible, mm-hmm. because my father kept his fees as a dentist as low as humanly possible. He worked in the old neighborhood, Italian immigrants. He had to raise 12 kids. So how do you balance that? Got to get everyone fed and clothed and through college, but also take care of the poor people in his old neighborhood where he came from. I bring that mentality to dispatch. So it's a combination of seeing the need and connecting to my father in a way that was very unexpected, that unfortunately, happened and lives long beyond his passing. He died 19 days after that episode. So it's the song, right? So it's the song. What's the song of your life? And the song of my life is, how can I serve through the tools that I have and developed that honor my parents, my father was a lecturer, a teacher, a professor, in addition to being a dentist. My mother was highly involved in the community and very much a giver, involved in the church. And I want to have a life of service. The school that I went to for my PhD was Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas. And the motto of that school is, a life is measured by its service. And to me, that's it. That's the game. Because I can die with $1 million in the bank and I can die with a mansion on the hill, but it's not going to mean anything nearly as much as what you said about what you walked away from my presentation with, right? That's so powerful and so humbling that you can go through life and be able to say something that has an impact on somebody and they act as a result of my being present, right? To me, that's the whole game. And dispatch happens to be the venue.
Damn. That's it's hard to come back with a response to be able to, I mean, we relate, but to compare a little bit. I mean, there've been times where, there were times where when I've been doing this, that I thought, I hope that what I'm doing is somehow making a difference. I'm going to continue to do it anyway, but I hope that it's making some sort of difference. And the same with you, I'll get an email from someone, whether it be someone from the public or someone from dispatch, who solidifies the fact that what I'm doing is the right thing, and that all of the connections that I've made, all of the sessions that I've been in from different speakers have helped develop and push more of what it is that I'm doing and get past any fear that I might have had before. In the same sense as yourself with my parents, um, they brought us up with respect, discipline, a good work ethic, and if it wasn't for a lot of the things that they did, I might not have had that same motivation because I saw them working their asses off and doing so much. And my dad, he's retired now, but he worked with troubled youth in gangs and stuff, and help to get them out and do different things. Earlier on, he was also the administrator of our church and was helping out with the youth. So I always saw him helping the community and so many other things, and my mom as well. So that also fits in with everything that I do as well. So a big thing with family and in public safety, it's all part of family as well. And it starts out at the top. If people in the at the centers see that their assistant directors or directors or whichever are doing stuff for them, they're going to do more as well. And they're going to stay. They're going to want to stay there. So I tell people all the time, that's how it goes. It goes full circle, man.
Yeah, but here, let me throw something in on that. The reason I love supervisors is that, yes, we need leadership from the director level, right? We need that. But the fact of the matter is, the person that most directly influences the daily life of call taker dispatcher is the supervisor. And especially if you have a big comp center, and if you're a supervisor that complains, the morale around here sucks. It's like, the morale around here sucks because of you.
Yeah.
Don't walk around telling everybody, oh yeah, the director's an idiot. No, you have so much power to influence all of your dispatchers, all of your call takers. The second thing I want to mention was when I was getting my PhD, I learned how to like crazy turbocharge my time management. So I was getting my degree, I was teaching classes, I had a full-time job, and I ran an international magazine. For 6 years, I ran an international crime magazine. And when we stopped running the magazine, this is the thing I learned. And this is what applies to you and applies to all of us. We didn't get, we got a handful of emails in the 6 years that we ran the magazine. As soon as we stopped running the magazine, we got a flood of emails saying, oh my God, you stopped. We love the magazine. We loved it. Oh my God. Generally, people don't tell you when you're doing awesome. They tell you when you suck.
Yeah.
The thing I learned from running that magazine was people are watching. Whether you realize it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you get a feedback or not, people are watching. People are always watching. And you generally hear from them when it's negative, and you hear less from them when it's positive. But make no mistake, people are watching. Your supervisors at work are watching. Your public, and when you answer the call, when you answer the line, they're watching. Everybody's watching. So if you think you're not making an impact, I'll answer this question for you right now. Whether it's within the trenches and Ricardo Martinez, or it's dispatchers doing the job day in and day out, you are making a huge impact that most people will never tell you about.
That's true. There's, I remember being in dispatch and you don't, it's a thankless job, but don't ever expect anyone to say thank you or anything. But when it happens, when you notice that someone is, when you get that recognition, that is what I'm getting at. You see that, like you're saying, people are watching, and it doesn't even have to be those that are within the room or across the hallway. It's those out in the field as well. When you get emails or someone comes in and talks to you and says, so such and such officer or, EMS or fire, whichever, just gave you some big kudos, and you think, damn, I didn't, all right. I'm doing something right. I am doing something good. And it's those moments that also, of course, solidify that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're doing an excellent job or whichever. But those are those rare good things that happen where when you're driving home after the shift, you feel satisfied in what it is that you're doing or what you did for the day or whichever, that in any little fraction of anything, you did something good and it mattered. And man, those are those best moments. And it sucks that in 911 they don't always happen, but that's what you're dealing with in the industry of 911. But those rare moments when they do happen, they're the ones that matter the most.
It's exactly the reason why the 911 community has to kind of be that for themselves, be that for each other, right? That's what Within the Trenches is. Let me hear some stories. Why? To know that I'm not alone. Another huge lesson I've learned, I used to train wardens from prisons all over the country. They would come into Texas and they spend 2.5 days and we'd talk, and they would walk away and they say, my biggest takeaway is I'm not alone. These problems I thought were my problems in Minnesota are also the same problems in Alaska and Texas and New York and California. When people think they're alone, they start closing in on themselves, and a little bit of self-pity and a little bit of whiny and a little bit of deflated and maybe depressed. The bottom line is this: you are not alone. I don't care what you've experienced in dispatch. I don't care how you feel. You're not alone. And you probably have people even sitting across the room from you who feel the same way, except a lot of times we're not talking to each other.
I was just going to say,
we're not, for people in the communications industry, sometimes not the best communicators.
Right. We suck at talking to each other.
But when you know that the outside world is not thanking you, it's like, yeah, you know what? We got to give it to each other.
Right. Exactly. I've said it many times as well in dispatch, or even when I'm doing Imagine listening sessions or talking to people at conferences, just in general, I'll say the same thing. Like, we are amazing at what we do, but when it comes to talking to each other, we suck ass. And why is that? Because there's that, again, what we've been talking about this whole time. And as we go into the wrap up of this episode as well, fear. It's that fear of our coworkers thinking that we're weak. We don't want to look weak. It's that, fear of people thinking that, we can't handle the job or whatever is going on. And we got to get past that. You did a session for the Dare to Be Great conference that had to do with fear as well. And I was looking for it here on my phone just a couple seconds ago because I couldn't remember the exact name, but I have it right here. And it's fear and resistance in difficult times. And that just really went with the theme and the title of the conference of To Dare to Be Great, because kind of going back to your book here as well, Overcoming Fear. It's 50 lessons on being bold and living the dream. There's a list. Lesson 1, there's the fear list, and a couple of the things that really stood out to me. I mean, the whole list was stuff that I've dealt with, but the two that really stood out were the fear of failure, but then, which is also kind of weird to say, fear of success. That was one of the things as well. What if I do succeed? That is kind of scary, because then you're thinking, what happens after that? How much are you going to have to continue to go and go and do and do and do? And the takeaway at the end of this is, if you change your mind, you can change your life. And holy shit, how true is that? So going into the wrap up of this episode, fear has been a big part of everything that we've talked about. And how crazy is it that it's something that really is, that you can equate to anything and surpassing it. In order to get what you want, you got to pass that fear. So for those who are listening, for those who are watching, what are some ways that we've been talking about all of this? But I guess let me put it this way. What is the takeaway from you on everything that we've talked about, learning about you, but mainly that word, fear, getting past it?
First and foremost, go inside. Go inside. Because it's easy to criticize. It's easy to blame. It's easy to gossip. It's easy to jump on the bandwagon to bully somebody else in your comm center or whatever. It's easy. Those are the easy things. Any idiot can do those things. But it doesn't start there. That's kind of an illusion. Go inside. Increase self-awareness. How am I contributing to this situation? Because you're only contributing one of two ways. You're either helping or you're not. You're either contributing or you're an obstacle for your comm center to be what it truly can be. It always starts with you. There's no place else to go. There's no place else to start. It always starts with you. And that requires silence, and it requires delving into the stuff that hurts the most, and it requires looking at yourself in the cold light of day. And it can be painful, and you can come up with answers that aren't very flattering. And you can say, oh, at this point in my life, I should be by now a supervisor. I should have a house. I should be happily married. I should have 3 kids. Right? We say, stop shooting all over yourself. Right? Because everything starts in here. The world sucks. Every dispatcher knows that. The world sucks, and people suck. And the world is amazing, and people are awesome. And which ones show up is going to depend on what's happening inside your head, not what's coming out of their mouth. Everything depends on what's inside your head and how you meet the world, right? How you interact with the world. That's where everything starts. If you think the world is going to change, if you think your callers are going to change, don't wait for that, because it ain't going to happen. If it changes at all, it's going to change for the worse. So you have to be really solid in knowing who you are, what you want, how you're going to get it, and understand your fear. And the way we do it is we go inside, number one, and number two, we go outside to get mentors, accountability partners, whatever. Because your brain is the worst place to stay stuck. Your brain takes your fear and stretches it into a monster that's insurmountable. And it doesn't exist anywhere except in your head. And once you realize that you made it up, then you can get rid of it. In a nutshell, that's where we go. That's how we do it.
Damn. Well done. This has been an excellent episode. Thank you so much. I think we're going to have to do a couple more of these, because there's way more that we could talk about. This has been really good, man. Thank you so much for being on. And how can people find out more about the 360-degree dispatcher? Any social media links, website? How can they find you?
So 360 dispatchers, 360dispatcher.com is the website. There you can find out about our ranch programs outside San Antonio, and the Supervisor Leadership Academy and the classes. Joe at 360dispatcher.com. You're welcome to email me anytime you want. I'm on Facebook, 360 Dispatcher. At Joe Serio Speaks, I think, is one of the Instagram or Twitter. Somebody else manages all this, so I never remember. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on whatever. I don't know, Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find.
Awesome. And for those who are watching and those who find everything on the blog, I'll make sure to put your links on there as well. So there'll be another added layer right there for you. So again, thank you again very much for being on. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that will be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This show will always be free, but if you're looking for any bonus content, any bonus episodes, early access to these episodes, as well as swag, discounts to the store, and t-shirts, you can head over to patreon.com/WTT podcast. Thank you to patrons, more than you know. Thank you so much for all of that. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and you can hear the episode 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. And you can watch this on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you again very much. And everyone, have an excellent one.
Thanks.